anime engineering here, and if the boxing gear from Megalo was real, how dangerous would it be in reality? Today, we're going to answer this question. Physically, this is a piece of metal equipment strapped to the back and extending to the arms, often in the some sort of metal brace, or in rare cases, it will cover the arm itself all the way around. There might be some sort of pistons attached to it, like in the case of Joe's gear, but other times there is an engine which looks to be electric inside of it instead. All in all, it looks quite heavy, and it also looks quite deadly. But let's take a look at exactly what it would do according to some calculations. According to a study, see the descriptions, a heavyweight boxer can generate up towards 5,000 newtons or 1,100 pounds of force in a single punch. Of course, this isn't just achieved with the weight of the arm. They are using as much of their entire body they can, throwing everything they have into a single punch. And yet, it's a lot less than you'd think. Just take a look at the 2007 study in the descriptions, where expert Kung Fu athletes' effective mass, that's the combined mass from their body and their arm in a punch, was only 2.6 kilos as compared to the untrained control group of 1.33 kilos. Now, of course, this was for Kung Fu. Let's say our Megalo boxers are a lot better and puts out 4 kilos of force, or a little under 9 pounds. And let's make a conservative estimate of the weight of the gear itself. Let's say it's 6mm carbon steel plate. 1mm thickness represents each of the 4 sides of the brace, and 2mm extra for the pistons or motors or whatever gear is inside. I'm also going to make it 50mm wide, just to cover the width of the arm, and the length will of course be half of the arm span, roughly half of the height of, let's say, a 5'9" fighter. With these measurements, we get 5 extra pounds of metal and more than 50% extra effective mass. All else being the same, our 1,100 pounds of force is now 1,650 pounds of force. And remember, this is a very conservative estimate where I've rounded the numbers in favor of a low strike force, along with the smallest gear to even enter the ring, and there is no extra acceleration in the punches themselves from the gear. Before we calculate exactly how devastating this would be, let's just make a less conservative estimate, like maybe 12mm carbon steel sheets instead of 6mm. If so, we're looking at around 9 pounds of force or 150% extra power, not counting acceleration advantages. That's 2,750 pounds of force, or basically like sitting under the weight of a small car. As for the damage this would do, we still have a few calculations to do, and a few different ways damage can even be done. Let's have a look at them. There are 3 ways that a punch can do damage to a face. The first of them is of course the shearing power of the force itself, bone crushing. But since there's a glove on it, that's probably not gonna be the killer here, as it isn't in real boxing. Of course, a broken jaw isn't exactly great, but it's not gonna kill you, and it won't kill our combatants either. It'll hurt, sure, but it won't kill you. The next point of damage is the pure acceleration to the head from a punch that strong. The head injury criterion, HIC, is used to measure the likelihood of a head injury arising from an impact. An HIC over 1000 is a life-threatening injury for 16% of the population. Now, for the study we use here, a punch force of around 5,000 newtons is only 100 on the HIC. So even with significantly more punching power, this probably will not end our contestants either. Does this mean the Megalo gear could be realistic? No, not exactly. The last parameter is of course the most dangerous one, the rotational acceleration from a punch. Indeed, our study indicates this is exactly what causes injury in real boxing as well. Why? Concussions and diffuse axonal injury, DAI. It's a brain injury in which extensive lesions in the white matter tracts occur over a widespread area. The outcome of this is all too often coma. In the case of severe DAI, over 90% of the patients will fall into a coma and never wake up, and those that actually do will often remain significantly impaired. So when does DAI happen? Is a punch enough for it? Is a Megalo punch enough for it? Well, a study found that 4,500 radians per second squared was enough for a normal concussion. For mild DAI, that number is 12,500, and for a moderate one, 15,500, and for a severe one, a whopping 18,000 radians per second squared. Now the original 5,000 newtons punch isn't so bad. It's around 8,000 radians per second squared. That's enough for concussion, but it's not enough for DAI. So how powerful will the punch with Megalo gear actually be? Well, the 8,000 radians per second squared I mentioned is measured, so since I can't just calculate it, we'll have to estimate it based on the measurements from the study. The study did find a correlation between rotational acceleration and force, but it wasn't linear, so it varies a bit, and it's a bit hard to give a complete estimate here. But the rotational head acceleration seems to be in the ballpark of the force in newtons, plus 50 to 100%. This puts the original 5000 newtons in the range of 7500 to around 10,000 radians per second squared. This isn't enough for DAI, but with 50% extra force, which is our conservative estimate, it might be. But for our non-conservative estimate, that's a very different story. 12,500 newtons of pure force. Even our low estimate is a severe DAI. Nobody will be getting up in the ring. Even if they do get up, it'll be in a hospital bed weeks later with severe damage. Nobody will be throwing fights on purpose, because when you get into that ring, one of the combatants is gonna die. That's even worse than the gladiators of old. Gladiators were rarely killed because it's very expensive to train one. Okay, so one could argue that maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's very light, it's made of aluminum. Well, if the acceleration doesn't make up for that, what's the point? Why can a corporation invest millions into the project and get a profit? Why would anyone buy it when it's cheaper to just have a roll of pennies in your hand? Because of this, the Megalo Boxing gear does not make sense neither economically nor competitively. If all your competitors die, well, good luck getting anybody into that ring. And if all your training is wasted after a single fight, well, good luck getting any investors. And that's exactly how deadly the Megalo Box gear would be in reality, and why it wouldn't make sense to have it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching. If you'd like to see why the gear is still in the store despite this, click up on the left hand corner. Feel free to subscribe or leave a like. Thank you.